The world has 43 intelligence agencies monitoring Iran. It has satellites, interceptions, open-source analysis, surveillance drones that cover every inch of Territorio Iraniano in real time. And yet no one predicted the exact positioning that this nation has taken in the last 3 decades. No one, except a scribe exiled in Babylonia in the 6th century before Christo, who described with surgical precision what you are watching right now. The name he gave to this force was Horn of Persia, and what he said about this horn is not yet finished. Consider the scenario. The year is approximately 550 before Christo. The world as people knew it was being rewritten. Assyria, which had dominated the Oriente Medio for 3 centuries with a systematic brutality that still shocks historians today, had collapsed less than 50 years earlier. Babylonia swallowed what was left. Jerusalem was destroyed in 586 before Christo. The temple was burned, and the intellectual, religious, and political elite of Israel was deported to the heart of the most powerful empire of the time. Among these deportees was a young man named Daniel, a Hebrew name that means Deus is my judge. He was around 15 or 16 years old when he arrived in Babylonia. He would end up dying there more than 70 years later without ever having returned to his homeland. But what happened in that interval was what no intelligence agency in the world could replicate 2,600 years later. Daniel was selected by the Babylonica bureaucracy to be part of an assimilation program for young men from noble families of the conquered peoples. The goal was to train an administrative class loyal to the empire. 3 years of intense education in all the literature and wisdom of the Chaldeus: astronomy, mathematics, literature, law, languages. The curriculum was the most sophisticated available in the ancient world. And Daniel stood out to the point of being appointed an advisor to the king himself. This is relevant to understanding what would come next. When Daniel received visions and recorded them, he was not an illiterate peasant with hallucinations. He was a man with elite intellectual training, with decades of experience as a high official of 2 distinct empires. First Babylonia, then Persia, then Medo-Persia, then the first years of the Persa rule of Cairo. He knew geopolitics not as theory, but as daily administrative practice. What he recorded as a vision, therefore, cannot be discarded as ignorance regarding the realities he described. In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, king of Babylonia, Daniel recorded a vision by the Rio Ulai in the Provincia de Elau, which today corresponds to southwestern Iran, near the border with Iraq. The text is precise regarding the place and the moment. And the vision was not vague. It was not metaphorical in a sense that required subjective interpretation. It was visual, sequential, with elements that the text itself would identify with surgical precision. Daniel saw a ram standing by the river, 2 horns, one taller than the other. The taller one grew last. The ram butted toward the west, the north, and the south. No beast could resist it. There was no one to deliver them from its power. It did as it pleased. It became great. It became great. This is the first piece of data you need to fixate on. It is not a passive dominion. It is not a nation that simply exists within its borders. It is an active expansion in 3 specific directions: west, north, south, and the text is precise enough not to mention the east. The ram did not move to the east. The expansion had a defined geographical trajectory. Now gauge the weight of this. Any reader contemporary to the text, or any reader in the following centuries before Christo, would immediately recognize what was being described. Persia, what we today call Iran, was exactly that. A power that expanded first to the northwest, absorbing the meadows in an alliance that the text represents by the 2 horns of the same ram. then to the west, conquering Babylonia in 539 before Cristo under Ciro o Grande, then to the southwest, extending to Egitto. The direction omitted in the text, the east, was exactly the original territory of the Persia people themselves. Persia did not need to conquer what was already its own. The text itself confirmed this identification in a way that leaves no room for ambiguity. In Daniel chapter 8 verse 20, the angel Gabriel told Daniel with total clarity, "The ram you saw with 2 horns represents the kings of Media and Persia." It is not interpretation, it is the decoding provided by the text itself, in the text itself. What happens when a text written 2,600 years ago describes with pinpoint accuracy the expansion structure of a nation that did not yet exist as we know it today? 2 horns, 2 united kingdoms, the Medos and the Persas, a military and dynastic alliance that produced the largest empire the ancient world had seen up to that point. At its peak, the Imperio Achaemenida, the Persa dynasty founded by Ciro, covered more than 8 million square kilometers. It stretched from what is now Pakistan and Afghanistan in the west to Anatolia and Thracia in the east, from Egitto in the south to the steppes of the Caucasus in the north. 120 administrative provinces, more than 50 million people under a single government. And the taller horn was that of Persia. Follow the historical reasoning. When Ciro o Grande conquered Babylonia in 539 before Cristo, he did something that no conqueror before him had done systematically. He allowed the conquered peoples to maintain their religious and cultural identity. He issued the Decreto de Ciro, dated 538 before Cristo, authorizing the deported Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. This decree is not only mentioned in the Biblia, it is engraved on a clay cylinder, the Cilindro de Ciro, which can be seen today in the Museo Britannico in Londres. A physical object, verifiable by any visitor, which confirms that the event described in the book of Esdras has a concrete documentary basis. The ram became great, but Daniel's vision does not end at the peak of the ram, and it is what comes next that transforms this document into an instrument of historical precision that defies any attempt at rational dismissal. When the ram was at its height, when it did as it pleased and no force contained it, a goat came from the west. With a speed that the text describes as supernatural, it did not even touch the ground. It crossed the entire distance as if space did not exist. Between the goat's eyes was a large, prominent horn. And when the goat hit the ram, the text uses a specific word to describe what fueled the attack. Not strategy, not interest, not calculation. Ira, an animosity with a personal quality. The goat struck the ram, it broke both horns, it knocked it down, it trampled it, and there was no one to deliver the ram. This text was written between 250 and 200 years before Alexandre o Grande crossed the Hellesponto in 334 before Cristo and began the campaign that would destroy the Imperio Persa forever. Alexandre was 22 years old at the Battaglia do Granico, his first major victory against the Persas. In less than 11 years, between 334 and 323 before Cristo, he destroyed the largest empire of the ancient world, advanced from what is now Grecia to what is now Pakistan and northern India, founded more than 20 cities with his own name, and died in Babylonia at 32 years of age without ever having lost a battle. In speed of conquest and distance traveled, his campaign has not been surpassed in the history of the ancient world. The goat came from the west. Macedonia, the kingdom of Alexandre, was exactly west of Persia. The speed of Alexandra's campaigns, which military historians study to this day as a model of extraordinary logistics and mobility, corresponds to the description of a goat that did not even touch the ground. The IRA described in the text corresponds to the verifiable historical record. Alexandra nurtured a personal animosity for Persia since childhood, fueled by his tutor Aristoteles and by the cultural memory of the Greco-Persian Wars. When Alexandre burned Persepolis, the ceremonial capital of the Imperio Persa, in 330 before Christo, Greek historians record that he did so partially as an act of personal vengeance. The text described ira, the facts confirmed ira, and here is the detail that forces any honest analysis to pause. The text was written before, the facts happened after. The sequence is irreversible. There is no way to rewrite the text to make it look like a retro projection because the manuscripts of the Book of Daniel, including fragments found in Qumran on the shores of the Mar Morto, dated between 150 and 100 before Christo, exist as physical, verifiable objects prior to the fulfillment of substantial parts of what they describe. The text was not wrong, but the vision continues. And it is what comes next that opens the most disturbing dimension of this document. When the goat's great horn was broken, when Alexandra died suddenly in 323 before Christo without a legitimate son capable of sustaining the empire, 4 other horns grew in place of the broken horn toward the 4 winds of heaven, a fragmentation into 4 directions, and that is exactly what happened. Alexandra's generals, called diadokos by historians, which in Greek means successors, divided the empire into 4 large blocks after decades of civil wars. Ptolemy took Egitto and the south, Cassandro took Macedonia and Graecia, Lysimaco took Thracia and western Anatolia, Seleuco took Syria, Mesopotamia, Persia, and the east. 4 horns, 4 directions. The text got it right again. And then, and this is the point that most historical analyses neglect due to inconvenience, from one of those 4 kingdoms arose another horn, described as small at first, but it grew extraordinarily. The text of Daniel, chapter 8, says that this horn expanded toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land, and it did something that the text describes with language of maximum gravity. It abolished the continuous sacrifice, threw truth to the ground, undid what was sacred, and prospered in everything it did. Historical interpreters identify this horn with Antiocho IV Epiphanio, king of the Seleucid dynasty, a descendant of Seleuco, one of Alexandre's 4 generals, who ruled between 175 and 164 before Christo. Antiocho entered Jerusalem in 168 before Christo, looted the temple, prohibited the observance of Shabbat, prohibited circumcision, and ordered that unclean animals be sacrificed on the altar of the dais of Israel. He installed a statue of Zeus in the most sacred place of the temple. The Hellenistic Book of Maccabeus, a historical source independent of the Book of Daniel, documents these events with a level of detail that allows for precise correlation. The text speaks of 2,300 evenings and mornings until the sanctuary is purified. Scholars debate the exact conversion, but the magnitude of the interval corresponds to the period of profanation recorded historically, approximately 3 years. And in 164 before Christo, Judas Maccabeo led the revolt that culminated in the purification of the temple, an event that the Jewish calendar has commemorated as Hanukkah for over 2,000 years, fulfillment verified once again. Once, but here, there is a fracture in the text that the most serious interpreters cannot close with Antiocho as the sole referent. The details that remain in chapter 8 of Daniel, the global reach described at the end, the magnitude of the challenge that the text calls a challenge to the Prince of Princes himself, the breaking point described as supernatural, exceed any historical referent that the Hellenistic period can offer. And Gabriel himself, when interpreting the vision for Daniel, used an expression that closes any attempt to confine everything to the past. Gabriel said, "The vision refers to the time of the end, not to the time of Antioch, to the time of the end." Daniel fainted upon hearing this. He was sick for days. He got up and resumed his work for the king, but the text records that he was stunned by the vision and did not understand it. He did not understand. And the angel had just given him the interpretation. This means there was something in what Gabriel said that was beyond what Daniel could process with the cognitive and historical instruments available to him in the 6th century before Christo. He understood Persia. He understood Gracia as an emerging power. But what the text was describing in its full extent was something that only time could make intelligible. 2,600 years of time. And this is where the map of the present begins to overlap with the map of the text in a way that no conventional analysis can ignore without active discomfort. The Horn of Persia is not a static label. It is a dynamic. It is a precisely identified pattern. Expansion in 3 specific directions, increasing intensity, refusal to be contained, progression to the point of confrontation with a force coming from the west. And when you observe what Iran, today's Persia, has built over the last 4 decades, the pattern is not just similar to the text, it is structurally identical. Put it in the right perspective. In 1979, the Revolução Islâmica transformed Iran from a strategic ally of the Estados Unidos and Israel. The Iran of Jah Reza Pahlavi received state-of-the-art American weaponry and had open diplomatic relations with Tel Aviv, into the largest state sponsor of armed groups in the Oriente Medio. What happened after this transformation was not just a change of alliance. It was the beginning of a systematic expansion that followed geographically specific directions. To the west, Lebanon, Hezbollah, the Party of Deus, was founded with direct support and funding from the Guardiões da Revolução Islâmica in 1982 during the Lebanese Civil War. Today, it is an organization with more than 150,000 rockets and missiles pointed at Israel, with the capacity to launch up to 2,000 projectiles per day in a sustained conflict, funded with amounts that analysts estimate between $500 and $700 million a year transferred from Iran. Hezbollah is not just a military arm. It is a state within the Lebanese state with a parliamentary bloc, ministries, hospitals, schools, and a network of social services that make its support base extraordinarily resilient. To the northwest, Syria. When the civil war began in 2011, the Assad regime was on the brink of collapse. Iran chose to intervene. It injected tens of billions of dollars in direct support to the Syrio government, sent officers from the Guardiões da Revolução to train and command combat units, mobilized Hezbollah to fight on Syrio territory, and established a land supply route in Syria that connects Tehran to the Mediterranean, passing through Iraq. This route, called the Corredor Shiita or Corredor da Resistencia by analysts, was described by American General Joseph Votel in 2018 as the greatest strategic change in the Oriente Medio in decades. To the south, Yemen. The Houthis, formerly called Ansar Allah, are a Zeta movement from northern Yemen that has received Iranian weaponry, training, and financial support for more than 20 years. After 2014, when the Houthis took the capital Sana'a, Yemen became the latest theater for the Iranian axis of influence. In October 2023, the Houthis began attacking commercial ships in the Mar Vermelho in solidarity with Gaza, forcing dozens of major shipping companies to divert their routes around the Cabo da Boa Esperança, adding approximately 10 days of travel and increasing global freight costs. A force of a few tens of thousands of fighters, armed by Iran with anti-ship missiles and drones, managed to disrupt the flow of approximately 12% of global maritime trade. To the east, Iraq. After the American invasion of 2003, Iran built a web of influence in Iraq that today includes dozens of paramilitary groups integrated into the official structure of the Forces de Mobilisation Populaire, with more than 200,000 registered fighters and access to the Iraqiano state budget. The Iranian ambassador in Baghdad has, according to American and British analysts, more effective power over parts of the Iraqiano government than any other external actor. West, north, south. The ram butted toward the west, the north and the south. And when you overlay this map onto the geopolitical map of Iran today, what you see is the same design, just with different weapons. The east, which the text does not mention as a direction of expansion, is exactly the historical territory of origin of Persia. And now there is a dimension of this expansion that geopolitical maps cannot fully capture, the nuclear dimension. The Iranian nuclear program did not begin as a threat. It began as a scientific project in the 50s, within the American program Atomos para a Paz, under the Eisenhower government. Iran built its first research reactor in 1967, with technical assistance from the Estados Unidos. It was after the revolution of 1979 that the program gained the strategic dimension that defines the current scenario. And it was in the last 2 decades that the race for uranium enrichment transformed the Iranian nuclear program into the most destabilizing variable in the international system. In 2015, the Accordo Nuclear, the JCPOA, signed with the Estados Unidos, Russia, China, Reino Unido, France, and Alemania, imposed limitations on the program in exchange for lifting sanctions. Iran received access to approximately $100 billion in frozen assets abroad. In 2018, the Estados Unidos unilaterally withdrew from the agreement. In response, Iran restarted enrichment at a scale and speed that the 2015 negotiators considered impossible within that time frame. In 2021, Iran operated more than 6,200 active centrifuges, enriching uranium to 60% purity, below the 90% needed for a nuclear weapon, but within a technological leap that takes days, not months. The Agencia Internacional de Energía Atómica estimated in 2023 that Iran would be able to produce enough fissile material for a bomb in less than 12 days should it make that decision. 12 days, not years, not months, 12 days. And at the center of all this technical and geopolitical analysis, there is an element that intelligence agencies cannot model in their assessments, because it operates on a logic different from any rationally calculable national interest, the eschatological architecture of the Iranian regime. The founders of the República Islámica do Irán did not just build a state, they built a political theology. Velayat-e faqih, the rule of the Islamic jurist, is a system based on the belief that the 12th Imam of the Shiite tradition, missing since the 9th century of our era, will return to establish a universal Islamic government before the end of times, and that this return will be preceded by, and possibly precipitated by, an apocalyptic confrontation with forces identified by the regime as the great obstacles to the establishment of divine government: Israel and the Estados Unidos. This is not abstract theological analysis. It is political data verifiable through primary sources. In September 2005, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad addressed the Assembleia Geral das Nações Unidas and explicitly declared that his government's main goal was to prepare the way for the return of the hidden Imam. In 2012, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei described the confrontation with Israel as part of an inevitable divine process. In 2023, President Ebrahim Raisi said that the existence of the Estado de Israel was a historical aberration that would be corrected. These are not speeches for domestic consumption. They are statements made in international forums by leaders of a state with 88 million inhabitants, a GDP of $360 billion, armed forces of more than 550,000 active soldiers, and a network of proxies in 7 countries. A state being run with an eschatological compass. Observe what the records show. In April 2024, Iran launched against Israel the largest direct attack in its history, 331 projectiles in a single night, 173 suicide drones, 110 ballistic missiles, and 48 cruise missiles. It was the first time in decades that Iran attacked Israel directly, instead of doing so exclusively through Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraqiana's militias, or Hamas. The layer of strategic deniability that had protected the regime from a direct response had been voluntarily removed. The ram butted toward the west openly. Israel responded days later with a surgical strike on Iranian air defense facilities in Isfahan, the city where part of the Iranian nuclear infrastructure is located, demonstrating both the technical capacity and the political willingness to strike Iranian territory directly. The cycle that for decades had operated through proxies and deniability had taken a qualitative leap. What was a low-intensity proxy war was becoming a direct confrontation between the two central actors. The text of Daniel is not abstract about this. It describes the confrontation as inevitable, not as possible, not as contingent on the choices of leaders. Inevitable, as a necessary result of the dynamic that the Horn of Persia carries in its own expansionist nature. And there is a question that conventional analysts avoid asking in public because it does not fit into the risk analysis models of agencies. If the verifiable historical fulfillment of Daniel's vision, Persia, Alexandria, the 4 kingdoms, Antioch, followed the script of the text with a precision that historians themselves cannot dispute, what is the rational basis for assuming that the chapters that have not yet found their full historical referent will be any less precise than the previous ones? This question has no answer within the paradigms of conventional strategic analysis, because conventional strategic analysis operates within an assumption that the text of Daniel categorically rejects, the assumption that history is the result of human decisions, and that therefore it can be altered by better human decisions. The text of Daniel operates within a different assumption, that there is an architecture behind the movements of power that the actors themselves do not realize they are following. That the Horn of Persia does not know it is the Horn of Persia, that Alexander did not know he was fulfilling the role of the goat that came from the west, that each actor acts for their own reasons, within their own logics, and produces exactly the result that the text anticipated. This tension between human agency and transcendent pattern is the heart of any serious reading of Daniel. And it is what makes the present so disturbing for anyone who does this reading with intellectual honesty. Because today's era is doing what the text described. It is expanding in the directions the text identified. It is provoking the kind of escalation with forces from the West that the text anticipated. It is doing all this within an ideological structure that the regime's own leaders explicitly describe as preparation for a final event. And it is reaching the point where the accumulated pressure, nuclear, proxy, direct, demands a response that can no longer be indefinitely postponed. The text was not wrong about Persia. It was not wrong about Alexandria. It was not wrong about the 4 kingdoms. It was not wrong about Antioch. The pattern of precision is consistent through 2,600 years of verifiable history. 4 words: the text was not wrong. Every diplomatic summit on Iran begins with the same premise. The problem is political, it is economic, it is strategic, it is solved with sanctions, negotiations, coordinated pressure. This premise is decades old. Agreements have been made and broken. Sanctions have been imposed and relaxed. Negotiations have advanced and collapsed. And the problem continues, not only without a solution, but on an increasing scale. Not because diplomats are incompetent, but because the root of what they are trying to solve is not political. It is an identity built on a foundation that dates back 2,600 years. A prophesied people, a nation that is, consciously or unconsciously, fulfilling a role described with precision in a text that no summit puts on the table. The error is not one of strategy, it is one of diagnosis. And when the diagnosis is wrong, the treatment never works. The world will continue trying to solve, with political instruments, something that has an origin going beyond politics. And it will continue to fail, exactly as the texts describe. It is not incompetence. It is that no one admits the true extent of the problem.